Hello, I hope you are all well. I hope you're all doing okay in lockdown. I guess I'm here today because I thought that as we can't meet together in the church building, that I would still bring some thoughts or just something that hopefully might inspire and challenge us. And today I thought I would speak about on Jeremiah and about his story. But before I share any thoughts, I thought I would recap part of his story just in case you don't know it. So Jeremiah was born into a religious home in Judah. His dad was a priest, and his family thought that he too might become a priest. And when Jeremiah was born, God's people were not living the way that was pleasing to God. They all worshipped false gods, even the king, and they even did it in the temple. And when Jeremiah was young, God spoke to him. God told him that he knew him before he was born, and they had a plan for Jeremiah, that he would speak for God, that he would be God's voice here on earth. Now Jeremiah was a bit scared and told God that he can't speak because he is a child. And Jeremiah didn't think that he could speak out for God, not against all of the wickedness and the horrible things he could see going on around him. God reminded Jeremiah to not be afraid, but to go wherever he sent him, and God would be with him and give him the words to say. God said this: "Don't be afraid of anyone, because I am with you. I will protect you." And then this is what the Bible said happens next. "Then the Lord reached out with his hand and touched my mouth. He said to me, 'See, I am putting words in your mouth. Today I have put you in charge of nations and kingdoms. You will pull up and tear down, destroy and overthrow. You will build up and plant.'" Jeremiah then absolutely went for it and started telling people that God loved them and God wanted to help them. But nobody listened, not even the king. And people began to get angry at Jeremiah, telling him to stop speaking about God. They kept saying that he wasn't telling the truth. So Jeremiah began reminding the people of what had happened before, that the northern kingdom of Israel had abandoned God and their enemies conquered them and moved them to a distant land. The same thing was about to happen in the southern kingdom. They had abandoned God and their enemies were marching towards them. The people trusted their idols, but it was only God who could save them. The people got so mad at Jeremiah that they wanted to kill him. Jeremiah warned the king that he would lose the battle. So the king got angry and threw him in prison. But this didn't stop Jeremiah. He kept preaching and teaching and trusting God. And then after Jeremiah got out of prison, he went to the king again, telling him that they should turn back to God and put their trust in him. But the king wasn't having any of it. The king lowered Jeremiah into a deep, muddy dungeon. But God was doing something in the king's heart. The king secretly had Jeremiah rescued and asked him what God wanted him to do. God said, "Go into captivity and you will live." And this is what happened. They went into captivity for 70 years. Now, when I read that story, I think Jeremiah was incredibly persistent. He just stuck at it. He just stuck at what God was asking him to do. And despite everything that he faced, he kept doing what God asked him to do. Now, Jeremiah wasn't always confident in his ability to do things, but he kept trusting, and God helped him and was with him. And eventually, Jeremiah's persistence with the king, his persistence in sharing God's message, it worked. The king realized that he needed to listen to Jeremiah and to God. He stuck at it. So my question is, who or what do you need to be persistent in? Is God asking you to speak to a friend, to share your faith? Is God asking you to do something for someone? What is God asking you to stick at? And I think sometimes we can think that our efforts are wasted, or sometimes we're just too nervous or too scared to do what God is asking. Well, if that is you, guess what? You're just like Jeremiah. Jeremiah was scared. Jeremiah, I'm sure, was nervous, but he chose to trust God, to step out of his comfort zone and do what God was asking him to do. So I thought that there were two ways in which we could try and help remember this story and remember that actually we need to keep sticking at what God is asking us to do because he's with us. So I thought the first thing that we could do is a memory verse. So this is from the book of Jeremiah in chapter 1, and this is what our memory verse is. God said, "Before I made you, I chose you. Before you were born, I set you apart for a special work." So I'm going to read that again, and maybe you can repeat bits after me to try and log it in your brain. So God said, "Before I made you, I chose you. Before you were born, I set you apart for a special work." So just one last time. God said, "Before I made you, I chose you. Before you were born, I set you apart for a special work." Now, I thought that one other thing that we could do is maybe a little bit more practical. So for me to do that, I need to go for a walk. I'll see you in a minute. So today, for my walk, I've come to the old railway line, more specifically the river. And I came here because I was starting to think that when a stone or a rock is in water, it's in a river or it's in the sea long enough, it becomes smooth and well-rounded. Almost like this one is starting to become smooth and well-rounded. And this happens not because the water in the river is powerful. It happens because the water in the river is persistent. It is persistent in the way that it moves over the rock, beginning to make it smooth and well-rounded. So I wonder that if you were persistent in what God was asking you to do, what might happen? What might God do? It's a good question, isn't it? And I thought a way in which we could maybe practically do something about that, I want you to go to a river or the sea, maybe not on a day like today, but when it is safe to do so, go to the river or the sea, and I want you to find a stone big enough for you to write on. And on this stone, I want you to pick it up and write something that maybe God is asking you to be persistent in, something that he's asking you to stick at, to stick with, maybe something that he's just asking you to do. And what I want you to do is write it on the stone, and then I want you to stand by the sea or by the river really safely, and I want you to just throw it in, pray and throw it in and say, "God, help me to stick at this thing. Help me to be persistent in what you are asking me to do." And then we can see what happens. See
see how he helps us, see what opportunities come our way. And maybe if something does happen, then you can come and let me know, because I'd love to hear about it. So go to the river, find a stone, find a rock that you can write on, see what God is asking you to stick at, and then pray that he will help you to do that, and throw it in as a symbol of, God, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna stay at it. I'm gonna stick to it. I'm gonna remain persistent because you are asking me to. Have a great week. God bless.